In my continuing quest, you could say, to revisit some of the games that I have covered before, early access games that are due for a revisit because they have, had a bunch of updates or maybe are even released as a full version now, I decided to return to Hades. Hades was a game that I absolutely adored when it actually came out into early access. However, it was early access on Epic Store only for a little while. And I figured now that it's been out for a year, it's had a whole bunch of updates since I looked at it, and it's available on Steam now officially, well, it would be a really good time to come back and take another look at it again. So what is Hades? For those of you who haven't seen the original video, naughty naughty, it is actually a roguelite that was made by Supergiant Games. Now, Supergiant Games are the people behind Bastion, Transistor, and Pyre, which are all absolutely fantastic games, Transistor being my favorite of those. I really liked that game. And Supergiant is kind of known for the narrative focus that their games have. They're really nice stories and the incredibly good voice acting and the narration and a lot of sort of variety in how narration can happen, oftentimes responding to the player in some way. And this game definitely carries that along on its own. It is a roguelite, but it does a lot of things differently from a lot of the others. It does have the traditional, permadeath, randomly generated runs, sort of meta unlocking system, actually a couple in this case. But it messes with the whole format a little bit and is very much its own thing, most definitely. First of all, you'll probably notice that it looks really good. It uses a hand-painted art style, again, something that Supergiant is known for. Their very excellently made art styles, and this is no exception. It is bright and colorful and it has a lot of character to it. It's a very vibrant art style, despite, being in hell, effectively. But it's also not so bright that things get difficult to read, because the game, especially in the higher boss fights and other things like that, it gets very hectic. There's a lot of stuff on screen, and of course with a very colorful art style like this, it runs the risk of becoming difficult to read, of you losing yourself in the action and it just being kind of a visual mess. But the game never really gets that far, at least as far as I've seen so far. It actually is pretty easy to read, and the colors and overall character of the game are well preserved while also being not just a hectic mess in combat, because things do get quite full of projectiles and stuff on the screen. So it is nice that it manages to look this good while also not actually compromising readability. You play as Zagreus, the son of Hades and Nyx, possibly, who is really just not really all that much of a fan of Hades, the place, or Hades the man. And you want to get out and go to Olympus with all of your bros and your uncles and aunts and things, all the gods, and chill up there for a while. So it sort of chronicles his multiple escape attempts out of Hades, going through Tartarus and then the Asphodel Fields and then Elysium and beyond. So it's a really nicely done roguelite, and obviously I'm a little bit biased on this one because I really love mythology, especially Greek and Egyptian mythologies, so I'm going to be a fan of that sort of theme pretty much no matter what. The fact that you actually get to play through a lot of these places with familiar characters is really cool, and you will find various blessings and things from the gods, from the Olympian gods, and some other people, like for instance the personification of chaos itself. And you will also be using various weapons along the way, and this is one of the interesting points that it does differently. You actually select a weapon before you begin. A lot of roguelites, you have a sort of starting weapon, and you're meant to either upgrade it through passives or replace it with something better, depending on the game that you're playing. And in this case, the weapon that you start with is very much the weapon that you're going to end with as well. There are not weapon pickups, but you can upgrade it and change it. And this is one of the things they have added to since I last actually looked at the game. The weapons now have variants. You can actually select different variants of the weapons when you actually have them in your hand. There'll be like a little portal in the weapon selection room that you can interact with. And you can unlock these weapons with Titan Blood, which you actually get by completing bosses with that weapon. So as you go through the game, you will get more of this resource to use. And you can spend this Titan Blood to unlock new variants. And the cool thing about the variants is not only, of course, do they act differently, they have some sort of special effect, but they also look different depending on what they're, like, who the variant is for, because the variants are based on gods and things. So you might have like a Hades variant of the sword or an Achilles variant of the spear. So you can change the overall sort of build that you may go for, because these variants are pretty significant in terms of what they change. Another pretty cool new thing that has happened since I played last, which kind of exemplifies how this game is doing things differently from a lot of roguelites, you actually can unlock new types of chambers and things now. There are two new resources you can find. There are gems, which you'll sometimes just get as a reward in a chamber or from bosses and things, and there are diamonds, which are very rare, and you only get them from specific bosses with specific weapons. They're sort of like a once per weapon per boss thing, so these are like a finite resource. And you can take these to a sort of contractor next to Hades' throne that allows you to buy, in the hub area of course, that allows you to buy new things, either cosmetic things like an entirely new entrance foyer for Hades itself, to new stuff for your room. You have a personal room and you can decorate it with these new cosmetic items, or actually functional things for the run itself. So new chambers or new types of chambers, like these troves you're seeing right now that allow you to sort of perform a trial where there will be a ton of enemies and it'll be quite hard, but you get very good rewards afterwards. And luckily the trove tells you what reward you're going to get if you complete it, so that you don't like do a really difficult fight and get something that you didn't actually want. And also things like a sort of hot spring-like area or a sauna kind of area that allows you to restore some health. So it'll just be like a little chill, relaxed chamber randomly placed in the middle of the others that allows you to, recuperate a little bit and gain some health back, which is super useful. And more besides. So that's a pretty cool element because not very many roguelites do this. In fact, I can't really think of any. There are some that will unlock new chambers for you if you've completed certain tasks, but rarely do you actually get to choose, to actually pick and choose and upgrade the runs, as it were, actually choose which ones you want to see. That's pretty cool. I like that a lot, and it definitely fits with the whole theme because, of course, Hades is a living, breathing place based on the god of the dead himself. So actually adding to it and changing its generation is like thematically consistent with how the game works and how the place is supposed to work. So I like that. They've definitely gone all in with the whole mythological theme, as you can probably tell. Everything is themed very accurately around like Olympus and Olympians and the actual realm of Hades itself and all the weird bureaucratic nonsense that happens there. It's all actually represented in the game mechanics, which is really cool and probably what you would expect from Supergiant because they're really good at that sort of thing. But it's, despite how well known they are for it, it's always nice to actually point out how good they are at it, I feel, because it's not that common. I also mentioned that there are blessings that you'll find sometimes in shops, sometimes as a reward for completing a chamber. The blessings are always from a god, and they will just be like a selection of 3 different things, and they actually can have rarities as well. The rarities will generally increase the effectiveness of them in some way, like increase their damage or their duration or whatnot, depending on what the blessing actually is. And you'll get to choose between 3 blessings, and each god has its own large list of possible blessings that list can contain. And also the sort of themes, like for instance, one of the new gods they've added since I've played is Dionysus, the god of wine and revelry, and his thing is poison. He's got a lot of stuff that poisons dudes in some way, making your dash have a poison nova, making your weapon have a poison effect on everything it hits, stuff like that. And of course that's not all he does, but that is a good portion of his sort of skill set, you could say, is poison-based effects. And this allows you to sort of create a certain build because you sort of know after playing a little while what each god can do. Zeus has a ton of lightning and chain lightning effects, obviously. Ares is all about like heavy damage and like lots of direct combo hits and things with like his weird blade rifts and all that. So you can kind of construct a hopeful build because you get to choose which chambers you go into next, so you get to see what possible things that you'll get from the next chamber, and you can kind of select based on what you want and what sort of build you're hoping to obtain, what you actually want to get next. So that's really cool because I think that helps to alleviate some of the RNG that a lot of people dislike about roguelites. That one of the main complaints from people that don't like roguelites is the fact that a lot of it's very random, and sometimes it feels like you can just have a really bad run and it wasn't your fault. It just kind of, you didn't roll what you needed. So the ability for you to choose sometimes between 2 or 3 different chambers, and it tells you the rewards of each one, and have choice even in the rewards that you get. There's a lot more choice and a lot less randomness when it comes to the way that this game generates things, and I tend to find that is just really conducive to a really enjoyable run because it doesn't feel like you're being pulled along. Even as someone who likes roguelites a lot, like myself, I can understand that some people really don't like the random aspect of it because sometimes it feels too random. So the more choice you're given, instead of just accepting what randomly has decided to happen to you, the better it feels, I think, and this game definitely goes for choice. The voice acting from the gods and goddesses and heroes and the like is also really, really good, and as you would kind of expect from a Supergiant Games game, the narration and overall sort of reaction to what you do from all the characters is really cool, but sometimes it even surprises me how much they sort of think ahead. Like, for instance, the gods and goddesses will sometimes comment on the previous blessing that you've chosen. So if you have like a blessing from Aphrodite and then you talk to Artemis, for example, she'll mention that Aphrodite has found you first and say something about that. And if you, for instance, buy a blessing from Hermes instead of just finding one, he'll actually comment that it was in the shop, which is kind of weird. He doesn't know why his blessing was in the shop instead of like as a reward. And even things like stuff that only happens occasionally, like the blessings from chaos, even he or they will speak to you about the things that you found so far, even though that's a kind of a rare occurrence because it doesn't happen all the time. So it's really cool just how much narration and comment there is on what has happened. And if you're going for a roguelite, this kind of stuff really matters because it makes the runs feel more unique when it's like you're crafting a little bit of an escape story each time, with the gods actually commenting on what's happening, with your character commenting on what's happening. There's even a narrator that your character can hear, and the narrator doesn't seem to be aware and sometimes says some really weird stuff, and your character is like, really? That's not even how that happened. Like, I don't understand why you're saying all this. And it's just kind of funny that the characters will comment on each other very often, and of course it definitely fits the whole theme of Greek mythology, which was a very dramatic mythology. You know, the gods and goddesses were constantly talking bad about each other and doing all sorts of weird stuff behind each other's backs. So the fact that all this is actually represented in the mechanics of the game is really, really cool, and it definitely shows that they have a lot of care for the subject matter that they're presenting, because it all just feels like a great like nexus of character with all of these gods doing all sorts of weird stuff. It definitely adds a lot to each individual run when you get all these little story threads and different things that happen each time. And you can even go back to the hub and talk to some of the bosses that you've beaten, because they're all just kind of like friends, or at least acquaintances. So you can like just be bloodthirsty for each other one minute, and then you both die and go back and just sort of talk to each other like, yeah, that kind of sucked, oh well. It's sort of funny that it happens this way, but again, that very much fits in with the whole mythology thing. They've also added a new weapon, which is basically a rifle. For all intents and purposes, well, a rifle / mortar. It's really cool, actually, and you saw some footage of that here. And you're also seeing a couple of the new things they've added in terms of the blessings. They added some duo blessings, which are a combination of the powers of multiple gods, sort of giving you a blessing between both of them at once, and they tend to be really powerful, but they are also pulled quite rarely. And you also have the new call blessing slot, which is almost like a summon or like an enchant effect that is really, really strong, and it uses that new meter below your health gauge. And you build it up in combat and will use some sort of call attack. Anything from Athena making you basically invincible and deflect everything, to Poseidon making you temporarily invincible and also rush forward on this like jet of water that does tons of damage to everything you hit. It's really, really cool, and it's a fantastic game. It is highly polished, even though it's still in early access, and all of the things that you would expect from Supergiant are here in spades. The wonderful art style, the great narration, the awesome character reactions and things, it's all here. And the game itself, like I said, even though it is in early access, it does not feel incomplete. There's just so much in it right now, all these blessings and weapons and stuff to unlock and chambers, and it's great. It's just a fantastic game, and seeing it actually released on Steam now, where more people can get a hold of it, seeing it updating frequently is awesome. They even have a cool thing with their updates where on the main menu you can see the patch notes, and it actually tells you which patch notes, or which features in the patch notes are because of community feedback. They'll have a little symbol next to them that says, you know, because people suggested things like this, we did it. And that's a really neat little bit of detail that, again, shows a certain amount of passion for what they do that you expect from Supergiant, but that is always good to comment on nonetheless, because it's great whenever you see it. And they also have a really nice little counter when the next major patch will be, so they hold themselves to a certain schedule, which they have been able to keep thus far, and it is really helpful when you're in early access to actually tell people when the next major thing is going to be and actually have a day-by-day countdown, because that keeps them interested, it keeps them playing, and it makes it clear how much you really do care about your project, because you're doing it right now. You have a countdown for everyone to see. So this is just such an excellent game that I have to recommend it. It is a roguelite of the finest quality, and it is just super cool to see how far it's come already, and hopefully by 2020, sort of like early next year when it releases, how farther even than it will be from how it is now. So that's Hades, everyone. The link to the Steam store page will be in the description below this video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching, and please do go and check it out. I'll see you guys next time.